right. All right. Got it. I see the I see the delay. Yeah, I see. Welcome everyone to BEULAH Fly Rods Live. Today is our first session, and we have Dave Nelson, a good guy and a great fly tyer, or a good fly tyer and a great guy. And my name is Eddie Howells, and I will be asking questions that are probably obvious. Dave owns squimpishflies.com, which is a fly tying material company, and they produce a long fiber that is tapered very much like a natural hair. And he has it in a blend, as you can see, with some sparkle in it. And we are going to be tying, what are we going to be tying today?
A baitfish pattern, a good little 3-inch to 5-inch baitfish pattern that utilizes the squimpish fiber as well as bird fur.
And bird fur is
a product from Whiting. I think it's their reject spay feathers, and it's typically very cheap at fly shops, like $7, $10, and it's junk. Everybody looks at it like junk, but it's really great material.
And you like it because
the taper of the feathers. It's a great substitute for saddle feathers, and it's almost like an elongated marabou with like very tapered. And if taper is the theme of the night, which is what I'm looking for with my flies, it's the bird fur definitely grabs it because it's got lengths from the base down to out to the tip.
And it looks like it has a lot of volume, and it looks like it has a lot of movement.
Yeah,
and...
great material to work with. And you could easily use other like feathers, like saddle feathers too. You don't need to have bird fur to tie these flies, but it's a great material to do it with.
All right. I also want to mention that people can chat live and ask questions or make remarks, and hopefully I'll be able to see those scrolling across.
I'd like to give a shout out to my lovely wife, Mrs. Squimpish, because it's her birthday today, and she's put up with a lot of shit to get this going. So thank you very much, Steph. I know you're not here, but
cheers.
Happy birthday, Steph.
All right. So let's start out.
So
a couple of quick. Oh, go
sure,
ahead.
Eddie, go for it, man.
I was just going to ask you a couple of quick questions.
Yep.
The hook, the thread, and that tail that you just tied in.
All right. So the pattern can go from anywhere from a 8 or a 6 hook, like a short shanked hook, like a 800S or a finesse gap, a 600 SP, which is actually what's in the vise right now from Tiemco. The pattern translates also to like a shank, like a Sanyo style shank, intruder shank with a loop of wire to attach a hook. It's more of a platform, meaning the hook. The hook itself is almost like, where do you want the hook? Do you want the hook up at the front of the fly for a game fish, or do you want the hook at the back of the fly for a game fish? Whatever you want, the pattern works either way. Basically, what I'm trying to do is find a support for the fluffiness of these bird fur feathers, which are just like, they're almost like elongated marabou. And what I have on the hook right now is just a clump of bear hair, polar bear hair, dyed in yellow. But one could use a clump of bucktail or Steve Farrar fibers or calf tail, anything to give a little bit of lift. I don't know if that's coming through, Eddie, but
that is.
It's great. So I'm using the bird fur, and I might as well show how to do it, which is that when you pull the feathers off, you get like a little bit of a clump of these like really nice, very webby This particular feathers are between 3 and 4 inches long, 5 inches long, and I'm gonna basically just strip off the hook, the fluff, and what's left just goes right over that clump of hair. I'm not actually supporting it. The vise might be a little bit, but just the bear itself is actually supporting the whole concoction.
That tail is polar bear.
On the tail, yeah, the tail is polar bear.
That's right.
Bucktail or anything that gives that little lift just to support the wispiness of the. And it's a pretty simple build. It's got a tail that wiggles a lot. I use a little laser dub, which is like a synthetic dubbing. I mean, a lot of tires know what the laser dub is, but a pinch goes on the bottom.
And you're sort of 50-50.
Yep.
Front and back.
So it's 180 degrees on the bottom of the shank on either side. A couple of thread turns just to lock it in, and it gets pushed back the same way. That particular process we just did is going to fill up the bottom of the shank in 3 tie-ins up here. So that's the basically first step. A clump or 2 of any of the Squimpish fiber boutique blends that have a little flash in them. So this, I'm using a dark blue with this. Comes off in a very nice taper with a little bit of volume at the base. And I'm going to tie this fly probably over the next 30 minutes. I'll tie it 3 or 4 different ways, adding in a little bit of extra stuff every time. Because it's such a simple, if there was ever a guide fly on the planet, this is it. Because it literally is like 6 or 7 tie-in steps, and then it's done. So that's got the Squimpish blend with has a little flash in over the wing. When distributing the laser dub in the bottom, just trying to get it, basically on 180 degrees on either side of the belly, and the clumps themselves build up the belly of the fly. So that's the belly there. A second clump of this boutique blend in the wing.
Are there any considerations on how you cut that?
Well, so
how you prepare
the fibers themselves are anywhere from 5 to 8 inches. So if the pack of the hair comes bundled up like this, and what this is the fibers themselves just doubled over and bundled. And if you were to cut off the rubber band, you have a big clump of hair over here. So what I like to do is to just take a small pinch of this stuff, about half the diameter of what you're looking for. And if you grab at the middle and kind of just do that, it gets you that length of what you're looking for and it's got the taper already on it.
Right.
And that's basically what I've tied in twice over here. I think that shows up nice. Just a little hit of super glue on a brush over there will keep that locked down really nice. The last sort of Senyo's laser dub on the belly of the fly.
All right.
And then over the back, I'll typically use something a little darker, just to give the complement of the I'm using a product from Aaron Laterra, and this is just a bit. It's just like the laser dub. It's just a bit longer. It's called Magnum Dubbing, and I'll typically add something that just complements the Squimpish hair that I'm using, whether it be light or dark. And what I've done is kind of made a veil around the front of the fly using this sort of soft dubbing. And while the hair itself lends a little volume, these lend the colors. I take a little brush and just kind of brush everything together and line it up. And then
I can see how it's turning into to that veil that you were talking about.
Right. So it's it's a twofold purpose with the veil. It's building up the fly, but it's also allowing sort of a substrate for the final step of the fly, which is to hit the front. So the front third of the fly or so with a flexible cement. So I'll basically take this section of the fly here, and I'll use, there's so many products. I've got 3 on my tying desk here. I've got Flex Seal, Flex Cement from Rumpf, as well as the classic Dave's Flex Cement, which any old timers know.
And do you thin that at all, or is that right out of the bottle?
It's actually pretty funny that I actually grabbed the thinner by mistake.
Okay.
So I did thin my Flex Cement because it was a little goopy because it had been around for a while. But when you take a little, you want it to be sort of viscous. You don't want it to be necessarily thick. And you can always put more on, but it's harder to put less on. So I'll basically just take a bit on the bodkin, and I hit the sides, the top, the wing, and the throat. And what it does is it traps all the long fibers going back.
And you're not really trying to get it to penetrate.
No, it's literally a surface skim to kind of lock into the it's almost like the idea certainly came from seeing like how like Bob Popovic tied his cotton candy flies and doused his sheep fleece with shoe goop, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you'll see that holds the shape of the fly, and you get all this wiggle of different length fibers going back over here, and none of it can come back, and none of it can come back forward when you're casting when it dries up. So if I was gonna stick eyes on, I'd just stick eyes on either side right now.
Right. So
simple.
I see. So I see here that Ben Carmichael has joined us and Drew Kelly has joined us, and Drew asks, what kind of thread are you using?
I'm using Unithread 6.
6.
Not a lot of torque is needed. It's more of it's a finesse fly in the sense of like you're just using a little bit of stuff to adhere to it. A tight wrap holds it to the shank, and then this whole section here gets, when it's bonded together. It's funny, like that brought up. So I've got a fly here on my desk. This has caught over the last 2 weeks like 10 smallmouth, and it's still like held together because of the front of the fly where I gooped it up. If I start pulling really hard, I can pull like little fibers out, but the actual fly itself is staying put because of what we did at the front of the fly with the Flex Cement and brushing it together.
I see.
So that's the quick version of this, and I'd love to do it again, taking a little time. And if anyone has any questions about what, the steps and etc., because the pattern lends itself to this is a 4-inch pattern. The pattern itself lends itself anywhere up to 6 or 7 inches for bait fish as well, and it can go small down to 3 inches or so. Like here's like a 5-inch one over here, and the it's really endless in terms of the color. What I was hoping would show up is just the movement that happens from supporting something wispy like a marabou type bird fur feather with something and a shape. The front of the fly has a little bit of push when you pull it, when you strip it, and that kicks over all the different. My mom just dialed in. That was pretty cute. You can't stop your mom from calling you, man. So like this one's like, I don't know, 3.5, 4 inches. And I've been doing some on bend back hooks. So like, here's an example. Like I tied the fly opposite and the hook's in the back. So this thing has a nice weight in the belly. Same fly, exact same build. I just kind of reversed it to be able to fish like drop offs that have like rocks and where you don't want to hang up in the world. Here's another one here too. So the exact same pattern, but the hook itself is riding point up. And I put some. The laser dub could hide a belly really nicely. And
an eye or a barbell.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the point, is that if you want a fly that has some weight, like that's a pretty good size fly. That's like 5-6 inches. And you can't see it, but there's a dumbbell in the belly here that's covered up with laser dub. And when it all gets scooped together, it makes this really nice, like round shape at the front.
Yeah, a lot of volume.
And that is when the water hits it, it kicks back over all the little different shaped fibers that kick out from the bird fur, from the bear, from the Squimpish hair.
Almost like a turbulence coming off the front of it, and then it comes back around.
Exactly. Yeah. You just nailed it. So that's like the whole point of like almost every single fly I'll tie, especially this type of pattern. Here's one hasn't been finished up, but you can see kind of they're fluffy. Once you hit it with the flexible cement, it makes a really nice clean shape. Everything gets.
But it also looks like it casts really well.
Oh my gosh!
It's aerodynamic. It's light.
Yeah,
it doesn't hold a lot of water.
Weight is definitely helpful with casting, because once it gets going, it goes. So this fly is this is probably my standard build on this pattern. This is like 4 inches holding up, and I'll do that right now again.
Now you're fishing. You're tying those mostly for trout, right?
Yeah, but the pattern on a. I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm looking at that thinking that would be a great striper fly, but you must be casting to monsters.
Well, when I catch them, it's just not that often. They're big. They're like 6 to 9 pound brown trout that live in reservoirs. They look like Icelandic style brown trout that are like, have beautiful color on them. It's silver, and they're very well fed. The guys that fish spoons and live bait, they get them big. They get them 10 pounds, 15 pounds. And every once in a while, I get one that's. I haven't gotten one that big yet, but I will. It'll happen.
So, are you fishing for those deep, or are you fishing for those?
No, I'm fishing it anywhere from the surface to about 10 feet down. The trout in the reservoirs seem to be, when they're willing to come up and eat a fly, they're active in some way on the baitfish schools. There's like giant schools of alewives all over the reservoirs I fish, and
I see Jason's just checked in.
And that's basically what I'm looking for, is an alewife pattern. That's what this is for me, and all these patterns that I've been tying over the last couple months is literally just for an alewife imitation. Something, 3 to 4 inches, fairly slender with a drop belly, and how to get them to eat that's a whole nother story, but because I haven't figured that out yet, but I will figure it out.
Well, I can think of so many applications for those flies. I mean, you can catch fish anywhere with that.
I think Johnny King is going to be tying over the next week, I think, and he's doing a similar fly in the sense of, he calls it a hoo fly or a cage fly, and the idea of the cage is the dubbing at the front of the fly that we goop back, and it keeps everything in the rear of the fly. So when you're fishing, taking quick shots on fish like false albacore or stripers that are coming up on top, the last thing you want is a fly that's going to foul. So we figured out this fly using laser dub and angel hair at the front of the fly. And when you coat it with something flexible or firm, it keeps all the mobile materials in the back of the fly.
An old school fly called, I think it's called like the Giant Slayer or something by Bill Catherwood.
Catherwood he has some goop at the front of that.
And so he would take dope, which was a kind of glue that would shrink when it dried. And so in some ways it's the exact opposite of what you guys are doing. But I still think he deserves some credit for
I love
making these
Catherwood.
amazing flies. Yeah.
I love how all the different materials he would use for these things, because there weren't the stuff that you would typically see in fly tying at the time.
Well, he was certainly a pioneer. I think also, I forget the guy's name, but the guy that invented Softex, is that what it's called? He used to make these flies out of materials that were thin and kind of useless, but he would sort of create this volume by making them hollow with the Softex veil or whatever.
Yeah, when you start coating this stuff, some of these patterns, if they didn't have the weight in them, they literally float like a Rapala, because they trap so much air at the front of the fly that the weight of just the hook shank will not sink the fly. So
do you think that you could tie a barbell into that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause it really quick and start over, because it's easier. So that's a 600 SP, I think size 4 or 6. So if I'm going to use a barbell, I typically tie it in just at the front, the first thing, because it kind of gives me a place to center my my tying. Now I'm not tying a clouser, so it's going on the belly. That's enough of a gape over here to hook a fish easily. I'm not too concerned about that, because the 600P has a nice wide gape on it. And I tie the barbells on probably like every single buddy else. It's a bunch of figure 8s. It's a random bunch of stuff tightening up your thread.
And once you feel good about it,
yeah, and then you just lock it down, because I usually hit it with glue anyway to keep them on. Not that it matters.
So when you're fishing for these brown trout in the reservoir, how heavy a rod are you fishing?
I really enjoy casting with two-handed fly rods. So I've tried over the years, I've been trying to work with the lightest possible two-handed rod, where a 3 or a 4 pound fish is going to feel good. Because while I certainly enjoy catching 7 to 10 pound fish, they're not the norm where I'm fishing. So if the typical trout is 23 to 25 inches, a 5 weight or a 6 weight single hand rod, 7-hand rod, or a double hand rod that I can cast a long way. Something about being able to cover a lot of water. And when you're overhead casting a shooting head system, and you can get a 100-foot cast or a 110-foot cast out there, you feel like your chances are better. At the end of the day, most of the fish eat halfway through at about 50 or 60 feet out, regardless of how long I've been casting for. That seems to be where they hit. So I don't have to cast that far.
But you can cast those bigger flies with the lighter rods.
Oh yeah, because the flies are light too. It's not like I'm casting very heavy stuff here. These flies that are 3 to 4 inches weigh almost nothing, whether they have dumbbell lines on them or not.
So just to repeat now, you put down a little bit of polar bear fur on the tail, and that's going to support the what's it called, bird fur?
Yeah, it's bird fur. It's basically elongated marabou, but it's got like so many different lengths of fibers going out to the tip that it seems to be a perfect match. Like literally, I just laid that over the bear, and it's being supported.
And you're going to tie that in sort of flat wing style.
Exactly.
Exactly flat wing.
It's style. Flat. Exactly flat wing style. And it's the tier's choice. I'll put layers of these things in. meaning well, I'll do some at the tail at this length, and then I'll take another section of feathers and tie them in shorter in the wing, and then
Mm-hmm.
even shorter at the front of the fly. And suddenly you have, 3 different lengths of bulk at the front, and the thing just undulates like a jointed fly, if you will.
And it has that nice fish-like taper.
Yeah. I actually was fishing the other day, and I saw some bait fish floating by where I was fishing. They were dead. And I grabbed them, and they were so much smaller than the flies that I was throwing that I was like, kind of like scratching my head, like,
Mm-hmm.
am I fishing too big? And then the next spot I went to had some floating bait fish on it, and those bait fish happened to be even they they were bigger than the flies I was throwing. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So I think that the reservoirs I'm fishing have many different size bait fish in them.
So was there any I'm sorry, was there any consideration as you were tying in that that belly of senyo fiber,
Yeah,
with how it relates to
the
the barbell
dumbbell.
eye? Yeah.
So I basically try to fill in the space behind it, Eddie, and then the next tie-in is gonna actually tie in behind the barbell, pull over, and then push back against it. And by the time we get to the third tie-in of it, you can't possibly see the dumbbell, especially once it's coated on the with a flexible cement over the whole bitch.
So now you're going to take some of the squimpish fibers.
Yep, just a nice little clump, a bit shorter than the tail because I'm using it for a wing, and I'm going to do 2 tie-ins of it.
Will you ever do like a reverse tie with the
absolutely?
with the squimpish fiber?
I'm glad you asked that, because that's going to be like the next tie-in.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of do the same thing, the alternating top and bottom tying for the most part in all of the ties that I make, is that there's a section of something going below it. So I don't know how that showed up.
Yeah.
So that's just to get the barbell is kind of locked in, even with the laser dub. And it's just to kind of coat it up and fill in that space. The squimpish fiber is a dream to tie in reverse if you're looking for a big profile at the front, because it literally takes, you don't have to tie in a big thread dam in front of it. If you just take the fibers themselves, as long as they're evenly distributed over. So typically you'd have to build up a thread dam here.
Right.
So if you just take a tiny drop of crazy glue right at the base,
and it holds its spot.
Right. And if you were trying to tie big bunker flies right now, and you were use a pen or something, you could like push back against it and get a profile you wanted. I'm not looking for a giant profile, but I think that shows up.
Look at that. So
done.
It's already laying back just
it's
just
done.
right.
Done. Perfect. Exactly like you want it. And then the fly literally gets finished the same way as before, which is you have a clump in the throat. And
if people want to go on,
I was going to say is that once it all sort of comes together once you brush everything at the end. If you trust that you're tying the fly, 180 degrees on the top, 180 degrees on the bottom, and you're making every effort to do so, then when you actually get to the front of the fly and brush everything together, there's no other way for the fly to be but even.
Right.
You purposely put everything in, tied it in symmetrically,
So with your Squimpish fibers, how do people buy those? I mean, I know that they can go on to
Yeah, we're
squimpishflies.com.
we're in a bunch of shops, so maybe your local fly shop has it, which would be awesome. But we also have a website, and we ship direct. We ship orders every day. Literally, the last, I don't know what how long have we been on quarantine for? The
Oh,
last
I don't
month
know,
has been
month,
amazing for fly tying material sales, I'm sure.
right?
Because
So King Arthur flour and fly tying and Squimpish fibers are flying off the shelves.
you can't get anything. You can't buy bread at the local store, but you can certainly buy fly tying materials.
I have at least 3 friends who have bought 50-pound bags of flour.
Of flour.
Yeah, 50-pound bags. That's a lot of flour.
Because it's one of the, flour is one of those things that's like kind of been like at times people like buy, like
Yeah.
in large.
Well, 50 pounds, you'd have to be doing a lot of baking or you might be getting some weevils. I think my mom realized her mistake and she's been trying to pawn off the flour on me every time I've talked to her recently. Sure, you don't need any flour. So that looks amazing.
Thanks, Eddie. That's
Right
literally
now,
just a little skim coat of Flex Cement over this whole thing. And you can't really see the dumbbell. It's got a great shape. If you wanted to put on some glue on eyes or jungle cock eyes, this gives a great place for it to adhere to. I do really like the look of the jungle cock eyes. And once you put it on and hit it with the flexible cement, the stuff is like bonded and sealed to the whole material. It's almost like a durable, soft, sort of spongy front of the fly that makes for a really nice. The stick-on eyes work really well to it in a bigger size too.
I just want to say that Bruce just checked in. Says hi, Dave.
Bruce Berry.
In fact, we're supposed to be anonymous here, but
hey, Bruce, miss you, man. Tiny hands. Tiny hands, man. So one of the things I would love to show the interested audience here is the difference in the different feathers that one could use, because this style of fly works so well. I've been talking about bird fur,
right.
But people at home might have like the spay hackles from whiting in different lengths and sizes, because it gets confusing whether it be a hen saddle or a cock neck or a cape.
Right.
And they all have purpose. This is actually a saddle, whiting space saddle feather.
That looks very heron-like.
Right? But it's actually best for streamers. It's like an elongated marabou, and if you were to support it with bucktail or a piece of polar bear or something, the wiggle is it's unbelievable. This is a neck, a spay neck clump of 5 feathers sitting here. They all have this sort of like great wispiness and curve, whether you're looking for it over the back of a fly or to support something very like wispy that would bring it up.
Sort of, again, flat wing style.
Yeah, so that I think when I started learning to tie flat wings, I'm so glad I charged my phone. I was like 90%. I'm at like 30 now. With that single upturned feather that happens from a cock neck, followed by the soft little saddles, makes for really nice presentations on there.
Johnny K just checked in. Hiding out in Maine.
Ding ding.
Question. Oh, here we go. Silverman 9R asks, where do you buy the bird fur?
Any fly shop that sells whiting products has them. And I just bought a whole shit ton off of Waters West out in Washington. They had they had 25 colors when I checked. I have I would say 30 to 40 colors under my arsenal, because over the years I've just bought them, whether it be like really cool, funky stuff like that.
And is that
or
is that a half neck or is that a saddle?
they just call it bird fur, not the mini bird fur, because the mini bird fur is way smaller.
Okay.
So I've literally been using this stuff for 10 years now. It's still $10 or $8 at the shop.
Oh wow.
There's enough feathers on here easily to tie 40 or 50 flies. So the difference between something like this and a neck, where you might only have enough feathers to tie a few flies with, at the end of the day, the stuff's junk, but it's not junk. It's really good with flies. I don't know, I probably have at least 40 or 50 of these things in my arsenal, because it has length. It basically has lengths from you get these great long kind of schlappeny feathers at the base of it, and then as you move up, you get these shorter, like more well-defined wispy feathers too. So it's basically what you want. If I was to take like a few of these schlappen feathers and stack them together, so this is going to tie a fly that's going to be 6 inches long, easy.
You could almost tie that into a hook all by itself, and
exactly. And that's what I was going to show for the next fly, which is that once you start putting a couple of these things together, if you add in all the bulk that's in the webby, basically marabou at the base of the feather, and add it to the length of there, if you were just to clean up the front of the fly, you're all set with a really nice fly.
And so when that hits the water, that's going to open up and expand again.
Unless you trap it down at the front with the dubbing that we've been doing, in which case it makes for a very clean silhouette. So if I'm centered here, this is a very short shank. This is a 800S from Tiemco. So this will be 4 tie-ins. It's as simple fly as could possibly be. A clump of bear hair. So like a couple of upturned feathers. That's from a spay neck. It's no matter. Just tied flat over it. And these are those, like that clump of the spay feathers. Again. So flat over one, flat over the other.
And that was 3 or 4 feathers?
Yeah, that was like 3, right?
Mm-hmm. All right next to each other.
Yeah. So you got the dark on the bottom. I mean, the dark on the top and the light on the bottom. And if you were literally just to put a clump of some gray dub on the bottom, so that made a nice little throat shape, and something a bit darker on the back that's a bit longer.
Yeah, so that's the Magnum Dub is the longer.
Yeah, so it's just a bit of a longer one, right?
In your last tie.
So once you brush it together and all the wispiness of everything comes, if you were to hit that now with a little bit of I've seen people doing light cured acrylics over here, or you could use any kind of cement that's going to kind of grab everything and pull it together. That's like I'd say a damn good silver side imitation. That takes like 6 minutes. What I don't even. That was probably less than that. That was
No,
like
that was
five
probably like
minute tie.
3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Right.
And
So that's
you're
like
chatting.
yeah. So that's like hey man, that'll catch fish. I mean, it depends on how complicated as with fly tying. How complicated do you want to make it? Do you want to use it? What materials do you want to use? How do you want to use them? Because I could spend 5 minutes aligning jungle guys right now. Sure, I'd love to, man.
All right, let's do a bigger fly with the Squimpish material.
All right.
And really sort of show off what that can do.
Big fly, big hook, right?
How big
I
of a hook
guarantee
is that?
I think this is an Eric's. I'd have to guess what the gauge is. But
Yeah.
I think it's a 4/0, and
Okay.
it's a big one. It's that's I don't know which model it is, but it's a pretty big one.
Looks like a pretty thin wire. I'm seeing a lot.
It's a very fine wire. They make lovely hooks. You can make a giant fly with about three or four tie-ins of this material. And again, I'm still using 6/0 tying thread because you don't need a lot of this stuff.
But you're not going to use like a flat wax nylon or a monocord or something.
So I have
like rope.
A clump of. First tie-in might give a little length.
And this is going to have the fiber, the sparkle already in it.
Yeah, that's the blend. If I'm not looking for any thing more than that, that's just to give the length of the fly.
And that piece doubled over is probably 8 inches, 9 inches almost.
Yeah, that's like 7. Yeah, that's 8 inches probably easy. There's not a lot of volume to this, but it's certainly intimating the length. So I took the same kind of.
It's all I can do not to go off on the cracking jokes about that, so I won't.
So I basically took the same thing and I doubled it over, and I'll do the same thing on the top or the bottom. And with regard to the back of the fly, so you do one on the top, one on the bottom.
That reverse style,
right? And when you're tying that reverse style, the only really important thing is that you get a 90 degrees with the thread here. If you have angled thread, when you push back against it, it's not going to make nice collars. So that's basically what you're looking for is just a straight up and down 90 degrees.
And if it wasn't 90 degrees, it would be uneven on the top and the bottom.
Yeah, so when you push back against whichever side is messed up, the top might have no flare and the bottom might look like it's almost coming out the wrong way. So as long as you have it right, you push back against it. God, because I'm a fly tyer and I watch a lot of videos on YouTube, the amount of times I've seen somebody push back thread with a big tube, and I was just like, I'm never going to be that guy.
What's your favorite kind of big tube?
Did you say big tube?
Big tube.
I don't really have one, man. Anything that does the job. So one of the things I really like about doing this is once you actually have that stuff tied, it doesn't take much to make the profile. Like I that's showing up good.
Yeah.
So once I get everything back where it is, I just hit it with a little bit of glue at the base, or in the rear collars. Don't even bother, because if what I'm looking for is the actual lift, I want this to be as high as it wants to be for the fly.
Okay.
Like if it wants to come up all the way, as with most flies that are well constructed, there's a little more material on the bottom as the top, and you start kind of getting, for lack of a better term, darker on the top and lighter on the bottom. So this is going to be 180 degrees of a dark color on top, and I'll continue with the white on the bottom. It depends.
Do you just throw that? Oh, go on.
I have a little thing. I was going to say, if there's salvageable material, they translate to smaller flies, and if there's not salvageable material, it's just garbage. So there's light material on the bottom and dark on the top.
Now, you were saying that you use more material on the bottom than on the top?
Oh, no, the opposite.
The opposite, yeah.
Yes. Less material on the bottom and more on the top. And that'll make a tracking fly, unless you're going to put a whole bunch of weight in the bottom of the fly, in which case you could probably get away with doing a lot of different stuff. So as long as you have a good spread.
And you have that 90-degree thread wrap.
And which I really didn't show a lot, but I will talk about now, is that when I'm doing hollows, I typically don't pull the thread through the collar. I like to tie it off and glue it, and then start it again. So a little bit.
All right, so your camera just blanked out.
Sorry, that's my low battery.
Okay, got it. You're back. You're back.
So that's got 180 degrees on the top with the dark, and 180 degrees on the bottom with the light. A little bit longer on the top, a little short on the bottom. 90-degree push.
All right, you blanked out again.
Oh man, no, I'm right here.
Oh, here we go. You're back.
No,
Awesome.
I see you and hear you.
Oh, good. So I like that idea about just cutting the thread and
cutting
tying
the
it
thread
off.
because
That's
if you pull it through the collar, it's going to pull through on the side somewhere, and it's going to tramp down 2 fibers or 3 fibers, and that's going to ruin that one collar that you tried to make with that perfect, nice shape that you're looking for at the front of the fly. So that's kind of the shape I'm looking for, that angle of material. So once I get it where I want it, I kind of just push up against it, and I'll take my trusty crazy glue and hit it just at the base and hold it to the shape I want. So you know what I want to show really quick?
And so rather than giving it a million wraps to get it to the shape that you want, you're just going to hold it to the shape that you want and then hit it with the glue.
Yes. So I've got it in the spread. You know, you got dark stuff on the top, light on the bottom.
That's such a fishy shape.
Right. So then literally just hitting it right at the base where the thread is, almost it sees through. You know, a little on the bottom, a little on the top. And if you want a giant profile, then you kind of push against this, like I don't know, right? Or if you don't want a giant profile, then pull it back and hold it in shape. It's one or the other. You're either looking for really good giantness, or you're looking for more of a slender shape. So if I was tying like a mullet, for example, I might just want to keep it a big shape in this part of the fly, just in the back. And then I'm going to do kind of a bucktail deceiver style here, flat going over. And this little one lift of collar here is going to
spring up
the shape I want, right? So if it's that particular shape right there, I mean, no one's going to argue with that. Like, that's a good shape.
And you did that without wrapping in,
Yeah,
100
there's no thread, none. There's no thread wraps. It's just literally just a tiny drop of super glue, and that holds it. Now, there's still room to tie in another collar, which obviously we're going to do, as long as my phone doesn't die. So you keep going through with the same idea of, as you get on the bottom, I'll go shorter.
Dave, I have a question.
Yeah.
Bruce is asking, what Squimpish fiber that you're working with right now? What's the name of it? What's the
this is the
style?
white. This is the white boutique blend that I'm using on the bottom of the fly, and this is the bluestone boutique blend that I'm working on the top of the fly. And that's kind of, I opened up a pack from the store. That's like this is what it looks like in the pack. And
right. When I first got it, I made the mistake of cutting it right underneath the rubber band.
Right. A lot of guys do that because the
rubber
terrible
band mistake.
Right, because you're basically losing all the length of this stuff that's there. That's where the band is.
And you're losing a lot of the thickness too.
Yeah. So, but because everybody's used to doing that, you just like cut off or whatever. When you're working with, like, here's an example of the Squimpish hair. This is a purple color that's 10 inches long. And the back. When I'm working with that, and you like start pulling off, I'll take a piece, even if I'm tying a fly that's 4 inches long, I'll grab a long wispy piece like that, cut it at the base, and now you have this like long, huge tapered thing. Like if you were tying a sunray shadow that was 12 inches long, this would be perfect for it, right? So, you just kind of hold it at the base and pull, and now you have a fairly good size 5-inch club, and I just center it with the really long stuff. And I do it again. You flip it over, do it again, pull it out, holding in the middle. And if you do it 2 or 3 times, before you know it, you have a perfectly tapered wing on either side of the material. Now, whether you wanted, that's like a 4-inch wing for that. I'll just cut that in half.
Now, is there any reason that you'd choose the boutique blend over the
If it's basically about flash. Some people like, I've come up being kind of efficient with guys down the Keys for tarpon, and I went down with my tarpon flies. This is so many moons ago, and they're like, we don't want any flash in our flies, and I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't want any flash, but some people want a lot of flash in their flies. So the boutique blends have flash, as well as some other accent materials, whether it be yak or angora, mohair, stuff to give it some kind of body, while the hair itself is like working with a patch of hair. It's like a great piece of bucktail. It's almost like a hide, and the hair itself is tapered, so you get to enjoy the taper. But whether you want to add your own flash in, like Creelix, Flashablu, I work with the stuff next to my desk. If I'm working with hair, I add a strand or two of flash. If I'm working with the blends, I know I don't have to. I've had a lot of guys say that are very into composite loops. They're like, David, the boutique blends are amazing. We just cut the blend in half, stick it in a loop, and it's absolutely perfect. And I get that because it is. It's if you were tying a dubbing loop and you were to take a little piece like this, cut it in half, and then cut it in half again, just like that, and then cut it in half again and stick it in a dubbing loop. By the time you get to the loop, everything's got different lengths, and you spin it up, makes for that perfect kind of shape. Like, I got a great example of a fly. This is literally two turns of a dubbing loop.
Wow, that's a lot of volume
for just literally 2 turns. Material. That was like an inch of a dubbing loop. Right. Oh, beautifully.
So you
beautifully.
Somebody just asked about steelhead flies and how that would translate to steelhead flies.
If you were tying any particular type of hair wing fly, the boutique blends would be a perfect thing to be a sub for Arctic fox or monkey, a Scandi style tube fly with that taper. you're using 4 or 5 or 6 different types of fur and angel hair to do that. That's the waste from the belly here, basically. And Farrar got it really great with the blend. Everybody wants the taper. You're trying to work the taper into your patterns to get like that right shape of what you're looking for in a fly.
Hey, Bruce just mentioned that that the real pros like to use the Pro Predator tubing as opposed to Bic pens. Apparently, that is like the Mercedes-Benz of tubes. So rather than using like an old
Bruce, you're gonna have your time, dude. So this is 2 collars of this stuff. 2 collars. Make it for a fly. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Hey, Dave, thank you very much. That was Dave Nelson of SquimpishFlies.com. And this was BEULAH Fly Rods Live. Stay tuned next week, next Tuesday, 8 o'clock. It's gonna be Johnny King, excellent fly tire, and Ben Carmichael, super good guy also. And we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Happy Corona.
Here we go. All right.